Welcome back to today's Lunch and Learn. Ed, Bob Donovan, who he has been with us before. We had part one as far as history of music, blending into the future of music from his perspective. He's been through just a few decades of some different music and wanted to hear his insights and reflections on that. And so the first question I was going to ask you is, what were some of the standout artists that you remember from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that really, to this day, now you remember?
Well, I can actually go back to some of the big bands. Count Basie. I saw him live with Lionel Hampton in New York City. And then around that time, things started to move towards rock and roll. And names that come out are Elvis, and Roy Orbison was one of the best. Roy Orbison, his vocal range went from like a normal person off into the stratosphere like he was an opera singer. He was fantastic. Other people, Gene Vincent, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino. In fact, the other night when we went to see the Three Pianos performance here in Sarasota.
That was awesome.
Fantastic. But he was one of the first ones, Fats was, to bring the piano out into the front of the orchestra. And he and Basie, because they always used to leave it in the back.
That was bold.
Bold back then. Another one of the greatest musicians going, and probably the backbone of what later became the Memphis Mafia. That was Elvis's gang. Was Carl Perkins. Carl Perkins was a musical genius. Ronnie Hawkins. Ronnie Hawkins was unbelievable back in the day. He was from Arkansas. He discovered Leon Helm, who later went on to form the band. In fact, Ronnie, he left the United States. I forget what the reason was, but he went to Canada and is probably one of the greatest remembered musicians ever to come out of Canada. We also had supergroups. The first supergroups I like to think of, that'd be like the Platters, the Coasters, a number of different groups like that. And then later, things evolved to Eagles, the Doobies, and we can't forget Motown. What a force Motown was.
Yeah, we were talking about Motown, and I loved hearing your reflections on what they did for the situation
at that time. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the one that comes to mind, of course, is Marvin Gaye. What was his song?
What's going on?
What's going on? And that was a protest type thing, or it was taking what was going on in society at the time. It was a turmoil, much like today, with Vietnam. And you had half of the people for it, half of the people against it. So there was protest, but the way he went about his music, it actually brought people together rather than dividing them. And that's what music can do. And when we look at the collaboration that has taken place in the past, when I mentioned, I'll be mentioning later on about Muscle Shoals, little old, as they say in the South, little old town down there in Alabama, rural. In the times of segregation, they brought in some of the best talent ever. The Big O, he went down there. Aretha Franklin went down there into this town, playing with white folks, black folks, everybody getting along. It was fantastic, and things were on a great movement forward between the groups socially. But then Martin Luther King was assassinated, and all bets were off.
With all those different artists and bands, I know that we've talked about their roots in music. What are some of your recollections as far as their roots and how far back it goes?
Well, I can't go back to the real roots when it started, but with Fats Waller and what's the fellow at the crossroads there?
Robert Johnson.
Robert Johnson, made the deal with the devil, as the legend has it. But a lot of what happened was based in the black churches because they had rhythm, and they were able to reach people at that level, an emotional level. Out of that came the guys that were rebellious, that were brought up in the church. Little Richard, for example, his rock and roll riffs. Then you had blues coming out of there as well. The Ray Charleses and that sort of thing, and even the Godfather of Soul,
James Brown.
James Brown, right? And So that's what the basis was, and New Orleans was a hotbed of it. And then it went up the Mississippi River, because a lot of the commerce went up and down the rivers. So St. Louis, as you probably heard of the St. Louis Blues. Okay, that was up there. And then we went on up to Chicago, although the river didn't go that way, but Chicago, you got the blues and everything else up there. So that was a big movement.
And that was the thing we were talking about, that you said your memories of how music was regional.
That's correct. And some of the things that made it region, and the reason I know this is driving across the country with mom and dad during the summertime. We take a couple of months off, and dad would drive us over, and we knew that in our area, Boston, there was a type of music played there. We get down around New York, and it was guys on what they used to call the stoop. They'd be sitting on the stairs doing doo-wop. You get down to Philly, that was a different type of music there. Baltimore, even a little difference there. And then when you got to the South, it was all like the Blues Brothers, country or western, you know.
Rawhide.
Rawhide, that's it. So you get down there, and it was the Grand Ole Opry. It was country. It was legendary guys. And a lot of that came from the Velvets.
Oh, right. And then when we went to Grand Ole Opry, who was the artist that you met? He was standing outside. Was it Bill Monroe?
Roy Acuff.
Okay.
Yeah, he was about 205 years old at that time, you know. But
that was amazing.
Amazing, you know, just amazing experience there. And of course, you had the opportunity to play on the piano that Elvis had played on in the studios, you know.
With the tacks and the hammers.
Yep. So that's how it make a different sound. You know, what's his name? Gilly. That was out of. He was the cousin of Jerry Lee Lewis, and they used that kind of thing back in that time. But it was country. There was the Celtic influence in the Appalachian, and then when you got west of the Mississippi and you got over towards Texas, it was Bob Wells, the Western swing, and that's when you would hear more and more of the violin involved.
Oh wow!
So it was all regional, and the reason it was regional was because of the radio stations. They didn't broadcast as like today.
Wasn't syndicated.
Once they started these big superstations and things of that nature, and they found out how to move the merchandise, and that's what I'm calling the music, because the records and things of that nature, things started to change. Rockabilly was a style of music, and that's after that came rock and roll. Rockabilly was fantastic with Gene Vincent and Carl Perkins, Ryan Hawkins, these guys. It was great music for a short period of time, because then the British invasion hit, and all of the various groups that came from Britain picked up, but they went back to the roots. These guys in the UK and in Europe, they were bigger fans of the blues and the church music than the United States was.
That's right.
And that's where they got their chops. Now, one of the things I'd suggest for people to look at on the internet is going to see who was at Muscle Shoals. Who were these cats? Look at the Wrecking Crew. Who were these cats? These are the ones that wrote the songs. And they were sessions players, not household words. And that's the thing about music. Music can be a team sport. You know, the guy that's not out in the front, or the gal, who's doing the singing, everybody says, oh, there's so-and-so. Who's the bass player? The bass player's holding it down. The drummer. All these different parts, they fit like a team does.
That's right.
You know, quarterbacks get hurt in football, and if you're the person out front doing the singing and everything else, you could be a one-hit wonder. But that band, it changes its name, and it goes on and on. Look at the Stray Cats, what they did in the UK. Kind of an interesting story in that. Another fellow is Leah Von Helm. That's a name to Lee Von Helms. And who was it that played with him? Robbie what?
Robbie Robertson.
Robbie Robinson. Now, wasn't he a guy that sat behind you?
Yes.
And what show were you looking at out there?
Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel. And you had a better seat than Robbie Robinson. That is so cool, man. So, now, you had a question about this sort of stuff?
Yes. So, You've seen the evolution of technology in music. We were talking about your memories about the 45s,
Yes.
when those were the one-hit wonders. There wasn't any space on the records for
Right.
more than one song on each side, and how history repeats itself and that kind of thing. Now we're faced with, we have unlimited streaming, we have all different apps that are geared towards video, but there's one that you were the first person, as usual, to tell me about it, and I wanted you to tell everybody on Lunch and Learn about it and how this could be used for musicians and artists.
Okay, well, before I hit that, I'm going to just hit a couple of quick things on technology. As a musician, you need to look at a broader picture today. Just be aware of the broader picture. Technology is a double-edged sword. I look at a couple of performing artists that, in their genre, did okay. Sun Ra, is that the fellow's name?
Experimental.
Experimental. That's his passion. That's what he did. And both people that were in the audience must have loved it.
There's a few more that.
All right, 27 people. Okay, but
It wasn't your cup of tea.
not my cup of tea. No, but all of the experimenting can be done like they did with the Moog years and years ago. Is that how you pronounce it, Moog? Yeah.
Some people say Moog.
Okay.
But I say Moog.
I say potato, potato, yeah, tomato, tomato. But so it's not necessarily the technology as a musician, because we go back to the roots. Look at one of the instruments that a lot of people are interested in now is that thing you play, that little, what do you call it, from the islands?
Oh, the
The
ukulele.
ukulele. Look how it's coming back.
Yes.
And that's something that is really great at Music Compound. You've got such a wide range of instruments and teachers. The instructors there, it's all personality and bringing out the best of an individual. You and I probably wouldn't, you might not be my best instructor, Matthew, okay? But I might find somebody else there. Or maybe you will be my best, okay? So that's the advantage you have with Music Compound. You have so many different options available to you until you find the right fit. And looking at a team sport, when we look at it, I may not be, at my height, I couldn't dunk the ball. But I could play in a band. And I could learn all of those teamwork type things. And that's what's so great. You've got a wonderful stage. You've done things on the video. Zoom type things. It's fantastic what's available to folks today.
And what you were saying about the collaboration with musicians, like it's a sports team,
Right?
but also what about the track stars?
Oh yeah, a track star. That's a guy who gets out who runs around, or gal who runs around the track. He doesn't need anybody else. If I'm a solo player, I could have my own career or enjoy my own music, whatever. So music gives it all to us. We can be a team player or we can be a solo player. It stimulates the mind.
And like that, with what you were saying about the stimulates the mind, that the perspective, we were talking about how this is a new stage as well. And any tips for young musicians as far as utilizing this stage, the video, but also the comeback of just straight audio?
Right. Clubhouse is the straight audio today. I was reading that Facebook has come out with theirs, LinkedIn is, things are going to audio because you can listen to it in your office or anytime you want, walking, running, whatever, sitting in a coffee shop, and you can listen and learn things that you want to learn. I know I didn't necessarily want to learn everything they tried to teach me in school, so I would be learning some of the other
Here
stuff.
too?
Yeah,
You know that.
Okay, so it's a wonderful way to get an education that you want by listening to it. So if I were a musician today, what I'd be doing is I'd be getting on something like Clubhouse or some of these others, and I would listen and see how they did these things, and then I would go about and hold my own room and invite people. You know, if a certain group of people just want to hear opera, that's fantastic. Seek them out.
That niche.
That niche. However, if you have that in you and you try to go to the general public, it may be difficult.
You gotta
So-
be that particular audience.
That's correct. So I would be forming is holograms. They did this over in the UK. I think it was Verizon that put it together. People went into a place. It was like they're going in for pizza, and they sat down, and it'd be a table like this one here, and it'd go all the way to the wall. And on the wall was this big screen that came down. Now they're in London, and their family was in Edinburgh, Scotland. Okay, across the water. They push a button, and the lady over in Scotland, she's sitting at a table with the same kind of tablecloth and everything else on it with her pizza, and she's being served at the same time, and it was a hologram. So they felt as though they were there.
That's amazing.
Amazing technology. This thing is moving so rapidly that I see in my mind's eye
Nostradamus.
is for musicians to have a world audience.